Todd. What's going on, man? Welcome back.
Man, I got to tell you, I've done a lot of, my book came out December 29th. I've done a ton of interviews, a ton of podcasts. And, you kind of get to the point when you're in the game, you kind of get tired of listening to yourself talk. But I got to tell you something, Larry, I've been looking forward to this one. And we were talking, prior to coming on about how it was 4 years ago today. We did our first, I was a guest on your show, and then here we are on this very day. So I've been looking forward to this. Man, you're a good man, and followed you ever since, and you're doing great things. And I'm honored and humbled to hang out with you. So
I'm back at you, dude. Seriously, I love this stuff, man. I love having conversations, especially with you. I enjoyed every single interview that we have done, man. And this is on my end. It's pretty cool and serendipitous as far as I remember back in 1999 when I was a senior in college and I was playing MLB on my PlayStation 2. And I always was the Cardinals, and I was, you were always one of the pitchers in the game. And just hearing now up to bat, Todd Stottlemyre. And, and I'm just like, man, it's so cool. And now I get to talk to him, which is pretty cool. So, so I'm excited about that, man. So
I was a better pitcher and a better player on video games than I was in real life.
I don't know about that. 3 World Series champions. I mean, that is going to be said for that, man. Yeah. Hey, so, for maybe the guys who didn't catch, the first couple of interviews that we did years ago, you're obviously Mel Stottlemyre's son. You played for the Yankees, but incredibly heartfelt story. About you growing up, your brother, relationship with your dad, and all these things. So just share with the men just some of the things even as a kid, man, that you walked through.
Yeah, so I was blessed and fortunate that the environment suited us great. And it's we got lucky, I guess. And, I've got great parents, and, my father passed away 2 years ago in January. So my hero went off to heaven, and it was a tough deal. But, growing up at Yankee Stadium, my father was a, 3-time 20-game winner, 5-time All-Star. He had great teammates. You think about Mickey Mantle and Maris and Whitey Ford and pretty crazy. Yogi Berra was actually his first manager with the Yankees. And growing up in that time in the mid to late 60s to early 70s, I was a young kid, man. I was a ballpark rat. And every day the Yankees had a home game, my brothers and I would throw our Yankee uniforms on. We'd go to work with my dad, and we kind of laugh. I laugh now. I look back on it. It's like Monument Park was like our monkey bars. That was like our playground. And to grow up in that atmosphere and to grow up around those people, of course, we were inspired to be in that environment. Your environment kind of, you kind of take on your environment, or your environment kind of takes on you. Well, we were like, wow, Dad's got a great job. He plays a game of baseball. He gets paid. People show up to watch him. He's with the New York Yankees. And we're like, man, when we grow up, this is the job we want. And, I was lucky enough to live out that childhood dream and to play with the teammates that I got a chance to play with, the managers I got to play for, a lot of Hall of Famers. I was really blessed and just so thankful and grateful when I look back on those times.
Yeah, you got to experience a childhood, obviously, that the majority of us will never get to, right? But the same thing holds true as far as looking at your childhood. And you said something there of man, this is what I want to do when I grow up. Was there any doubt in your mind that's man, I'm going all in. I'm doing this.
Yeah, no, you know what? There wasn't a doubt until, actually I was in major leagues for a couple of years and got sent down the first year, then got sent down the second year back. That was the only time I was probably vulnerable because it was so challenging. But prior to that moment, all the way going through life, and even though, we lived in a great shadow, people, my father was he was kind of like the Yankees great hope at that time, and winning 20 games and playing in 5 All-Star games. The city of New York loved him. They admired him, not only the athlete he was, but the person he was. So it was a huge shadow. And inside that shadow, the words that showed up on the outside of it, the buzzwords were, what are you guys going to do when you don't make it? Because you're not like your father. So, we were fighting the opinions of other people our entire life. And I think that because of it, we got so used to it, and to a point, and my mother and father were great at helping us handle all of that noise, right? But we got so used to it. You kind of grow callous. You get thick skin, right? Thick blood, and you get to a point where someone's opinion of your life, your dream, your ambitions, it becomes so meaningless to you. And it's the thing that people have a very difficult time with, is when someone, especially maybe in their circle or loved one, says, man, you can't do that, or why would you try to do that? And people are stealing dreams all the time, and just based on opinion. And, I feel so grateful that the opinions of other people didn't get in the way, didn't become a roadblock to our dreams, like it does for so many people.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I used the word serendipitous earlier, but you said something there that I think a lot of men need to hear. So last week, the show before this one, I interviewed Chris Gardner, the Pursuit of Happiness guy. And there's that part in that movie where he tells his son, and he really did tell his son this, is don't ever let anyone tell you can't do something, not even me. So as men are listening to this particular show, maybe a guy's in his car, maybe he's about ready to pull in his house. Maybe he isn't necessarily living the dream life that he always wanted to, or maybe he's listened to the naysayers too much. Yeah. What type of advice would you give a guy who maybe has a dream, wants to do something, but he's got all these naysayers in his head, not to mention the fact probably that maybe even the loudest voice, the loudest naysayer might be his own. Like, how do we overcome that?
Yeah, in a lot of cases, that's the case. So I would tell you, first of all, own it, right? And I just think, man, there's so many stories out there that are inspiring stories of people maybe breaking records or doing things that have never been done. I'm a firm believer in this, that, there's statistically, they say that the chances of us, number one, even being born was like 1 in 400 million. Now I want you to stop and think about that. What if that's true? And if that's true, that means at the day you were born, you almost broke into the world of impossible. I always tell people, why stop there at birth? You got a whole life to live. You were born for greatness. There's a champion seed that lives inside of you. But at the end of the day, you have to own it. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's going to be hard. But here's what I'm going to tell you. You can pick your pain. You can live someone else's. Someone else can put a dream on you, or you can go live your own. They're both going to be hard. Pick your pain. Pick the road you want to travel. And, it's so important. I tell my kids today, I got 5 children. I'm like, don't let anyone ever raise the bar for you. That's your bar. That's your dream. It's your life. Don't let someone raise or lower it for you ever, by the way. And when you look, and I always tell people, I go, look, the greatest competition is the person staring back in the mirror. That's the person you're competing against every day. And what do I mean by this? This is the opportunity to compete against you every single day. See, today I'm competing against yesterday. Can I be better today? And if we can grow to find that mindset, ultimately, look, here's the deal. If you don't live your own dream and you get positioned living where someone else tells you this is what you're going to do and this is what you can or can't do. Let me tell you something. And times will get difficult because everything is not going to be great all the time. When times are tough, if you don't own your dream, you will bail out 100% of the time because it's not yours anyway. But when you own it, right? And when you really own it, see, I owned my dream. It didn't matter the opinions of other people. And by the way, I was just like everyone else. Were there times of self-doubt? Yes, there were times. But if you can begin to visualize, see yourself, lots of different tools that I have in the book. Look, you tie your emotions to that dream, and then you feel and see yourself live that dream out. Nothing stops you at that point. Then at that point, it's kind of like you, man. When you started this podcast, you're like, man, I want to do this. I want to do this for the guys. I want to do this for the men. You could have had a lot of people say, hey, man, no one's going to listen to that. No one's going to plug into it. Hey, you're in the wrong demographic. You're in the wrong crowd. But at some point, you emotionally said, I'm in this thing, because at the end of the day, our emotions drive our actions. So I would just tell the guys out there, man, first of all, you got to own it. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean there's not going to be setbacks. That doesn't mean you're not going to fail your way through it. Doesn't mean any of that. But here's the other thing. Here's the alternative. Don't go for your dream. And you're still going to go through setbacks. You're still going to go through failures. You're still going to go through disappointment. Which road do you want to pick? The one that you can get excited about, or one someone else got excited for you about? Man, pick your road.
I love that, man. And that is so true. And, just a side note about the podcast. Yeah. There were times, man, I was terrified. And now, doing this now 6 years, I will never not do this. Like, I couldn't imagine life without it, and I think that's where the emotion comes from, right? It's the emotion of like, this is not only something I do. And for those of you out there in the audience listening, this is not only something that I do, but this is who I am. This is a part of who I am, right? Yeah. And I love that, man. I love that message.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I don't want to start anything off on a sad note, but I just want to talk about your brother for just a few minutes.
Yeah.
For those out there, and the reason I want to share this story again is because I think it's safe to say that people who are in the limelight, right? People who have a lot of people watching them, famous people like yourself and that kind of thing. I think people view people like that, like yourself, and they're like, that guy probably never has a bad day. Like, his life is perfect all times, right? That's not the case. Like, you've been through trials and tribulations. You've been through adversity. I mean, and especially your brother. So share that story if you don't mind.
So, it's really the making of the book, The Observer. So if I take you and your audience back to 1993, in 1993, I'm a starting pitcher with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm in my mid to late 20s. I'm living my childhood dream. I'm making millions of dollars. We just won our second world championship in consecutive years. So we were 1992 world champions, 1993 world champions. I go home from the winter, and if you looked at my life from the outside, you'd been like, this guy grew up in Yankee Stadium under a legend, wanted to play Major League Baseball, lived the dream out. He's in his 20s. He's making millions of dollars. He's now a two-time world champion. Like, geez, right? It's like, why does he get all the luck? There's a problem here. The problem is that the winter of 93, the spring of 94, the problem was when I looked in the mirror, I hated the guy staring back at me. And on the outside, I might have looked pretty good, like things were going great for me. On the inside, I was living a very broken and dark life, because 12 years prior to to winning that second world championship, 12 years prior to that, I was 15. My little brother was 11. He was on his third bout of leukemia. The doctors said that his only chance for long-term life was a bone marrow transplant. I was the perfect match. I provided the bone marrow. My marrow was taken from my body, injected it into his body. My marrow eventually put him into a coma that eventually took his life. Now, tragic. And I know there's dads out there that have probably gone through very similar tragedies, maybe in their adult life, but maybe in their childhood. And here's what I would tell you. For my parents, I can't even imagine. So for the dads out there that have had to bury a child, I can't imagine what that must feel like, because my parents had to bury their 11-year-old son. But, when we left that hospital, obviously sadness, we were taken to our knees. It just crushed our family. But there were two other emotions I left the hospital with that day. And one of them was hate. I hated God. I hated the world. It didn't seem fair. I was like, how do you take my little brother away from me? He was only 11. That's not fair. He didn't get to live a very long life. And then there was something overwhelming, and it was guilt. And it started to get into my mind. It became the way I thought. It became the way I felt. I was like, my marrow put my little brother into a coma and took his life. And I started to see and feel as the person that put my little brother and took him to death. I started to portray in my mind the way I thought, and in my heart the way I felt, that I was the murderer of my little brother. And by the way, it didn't matter. Doctors said, Todd, it wasn't your fault. You did everything you could. My mom and dad says, like, Todd, it's not your fault, man. They were right there for me. And they were right there with me going through it. But when you're a 15-year-old boy, it doesn't matter what your parents say or someone else says. You think and feel what you think is the truth. And a lie, it was a lie, but I based it and I made it true to me. And then I rewired it. And then it became who I was, because the more I told that story in my mind to myself, and the more I felt that tragedy and felt that my marrow killed my little brother, I basically rewired my mind and brain that's who I was now. That was now my identity. And here's what happened is, like, at the end of, after the World Series in 93, I was just at a place, and I was at a point, even though I looked great from the outside, I still wasn't performing on the field, even close to my potential. And there was something holding me back. More importantly, there was something in my life also holding me back off the field, because here's what would happen. I kept ending up in the same place mentally and emotionally. I kept having these explosions when I couldn't control something. When something wasn't going my way, hate and guilt would show up on the surface and ruin the mastery of the moment. And I was at a place where I'm like, I'm tired of it. And I said, man, and I reached out. I said, I want help because I need to fix this. And because I was tired of living in darkness, because I hated who I was. And by the way, when you hate who you are, you never have the power to love someone else. And that was me, man. I was hateful and angry and guilty. And I reached out that winter to the guru of Major League Baseball. He was a mindset coach. The guy's name was Harvey Dorfman. He wrote The Mental Game of Baseball. And I called Harvey. I said, Harvey, this is Todd Stottlemyre. And Harvey says, man, I've been waiting on your call. And I was like, geez, I didn't even know you knew who I was. And I said, Harvey, I need help. And he says, man, I know. We booked a 2-hour meeting. That 2-hour meeting lasted 12 hours. 2 critical points in that 12 hours. The first hour and the last hour. First hour, he says to me, he said, would you do it again? Larry, I didn't know what he's talking about. I said, do what? He said, would you give a bone marrow transplant to your little brother again? And man, I broke down. I cried like a baby. I got so emotional. And then when I came to and I said, Harvey, I looked right back at him. I said, I do it every minute, every hour of every day. And then he got really close to me, looked me deep into my eyes. He said, haven't you already done that? I said, yes. He said, did you do everything you could do? I said, man, I did it. Harvey, I did everything I could do. He said, Todd, you're not God. He said, you weren't in control whether he lived, or you weren't in control whether he died. It had nothing to do with, see, you've done everything you can do, and it is time for you to let it go. It's the first time in my life someone gave me permission to let it go. See, I was living in a prison of unforgiveness. I refused to forgive me. I was so busy taking the blame, and I wired myself to be that person. Then the last hour, he said, will you go on a 7-day challenge with me? And I said, man, I'll do, yes. And he said, listen, for the next 7 days, you're not allowed to react or respond to anything. No stimulus, no competition. You can't defend anything. You're not allowed to respond. All you can do is document. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to observe all of your thoughts, and I want you to observe your emotions, and I want you to document that into a journal. And then what we're going to do 7 days from now is we're going to begin the building process, the tools to keep you from blowing up and getting out of peak performance, to becoming the best version of yourself and getting back to rewiring the control. Here's what happened. It was crazy. See, for that 7 days, I wasn't allowed to react or respond, compete or defend. What did it mean? Dropped my ego. I didn't have to defend anything. I wasn't competing against anything. What was I doing? Documenting what was going on in my mind, the thoughts I was having, documenting the feelings, and basically becoming the observer. And it's really the making of this book, because from that point on, it was all about building tools and principles to help me get into a peak state, help me stay in a peak state, but help me at any time I didn't like the state I was in. Harvey explained to me, you have the power to change that any time you want. And it was a crazy experience. And it was really, I'm grateful to this day for Harvey, because he changed the direction of my life in that 12-hour meeting. Now, it was longer than 12 hours because he stayed with me for a couple of years. So it was like coaching and mentoring, not only through my career, but not even on the field, but also off the field. So an incredible experience. Since 1993, I've been focused and working on becoming the observer. I tell people there's 50 principles and models in this book, The Observer, about peak performance and about different states. And I haven't mastered any of them. The beauty is that when I break down for moments, not days, not hours, not months, just for a moment. But I have tools in the tool chest to help me go from one state to another state. It's very positive.
Wow, man. So I got to tell you, over 700 episodes recorded, and I think I've cried 3 or 4 times. The last time we did that in-person podcast together when you were here in St. Louis a few years back, that was one, and this is now another. Just hearing that story, because I heard details in there that I didn't get to hear the first time.
Yeah,
and especially your I remember you bringing up Harvey in previous interviews, but I'd never heard that in depth of what happened in your meetings with him. But man, what an absolute gold life lesson of just simply unpacking trauma, unpacking negativity, and what a cool thing to do, because I think you'll agree with me. What do most men do with stress and trauma and anxiety? What do we do?
Yeah, man, we carry it. We
carry it,
press it. We put it into a deal. We never heal it. We're too proud, man. As men, it's like we can handle it, but we box it up. And when we box it up and that we never heal the pain, we become that pain. It rewires who we are. I want you to think about something, that when we carry yesterday's baggage, when we carry a tragedy from the past, when we carry a mistake, maybe we did something, maybe we had to go to jail. When we came out, we're still in jail because we're still that person, right? And until we heal it, then the best thing that we can create in our future is our old story. Because our old story maintains, we've retained it on the inside of us. So we can never create anything outside of our old story. This is where thoughts and emotions, man, they go hand in hand. It's kind of like, there's so much science out there that you can rewire the way you think. You can rewire the way you feel. But if all we're feeling and all we're thinking and all we're holding on to is yesterday's baggage, then the best we can be today is yesterday's baggage. See, we have to get to a point where we let it go. And I got to tell you something, man. It took me, think about it. I carried this shit. I call it shit, and excuse my language. I carried it for 12 years. When you carry something for 12 years, you become that. And that's what I became. And I got to a point where I didn't like who I was, man. And I was like, and that whole rewiring process, first to be able to let it go. The second thing is to be able to get in the present moment without yesterday's baggage. I'm talking about getting in the present moment, in this very moment, but not hanging on to yesterday's thoughts or yesterday's emotions. And man, when we get to that point we become the newest creators of our best life moving forward.
I really love how you intertwine how it steals joy, because I think it's safe to say that at that point in your life, man, you were a 2-time World Series champion, right? But I think it's safe to say that you could have been a 10-time World Series champion, and that joy probably still would not have been recognized,
right,
or even taken in because of what you were going through.
Yeah. I mean, I was broken. I was so broken. I was living in darkness, making millions of dollars, making millions, like living life to its fullest, 2 times, living the life of my dreams. Everything looked great, man. But I was broken. Because I was broken, I lived unforgiven. I lived in anger. I lived guilty. I lived with overwhelm. I lived with all of the things that lead you down a path of destruction. That's what I was living with. And I believe to this day that if I wouldn't have had that intersection and created that relationship with Harvey Dorfman, I don't even know if I would even be here today, because there were times in life when I couldn't control a situation. The hate and guilt would show up to sometimes explosions where I would black out. I mean, just black out, and then literally come to and have no idea what I just gone through. That's pain, man. And look, I know there's some guys right now listening, and I want to tell you right now, for all the men out there that are still hanging on to yesterday's baggage, traumas, tragedies, setbacks, losing jobs, feeling like a failure, feeling like there's no way out. There's a way out. There's a way out. You're going to have to make some tough choices, some tough decisions. There's a better way to live. And life is not over. You might be flat on your back. I've been there, man. I've been flat on my back. And I've been to where I didn't feel like I deserved to live. And I'm telling you right now, for all the men that are out there that are hanging on to this shit, I'm just telling you right now, we got to first let go. We got to first forgive. Harvey told me something so important. He said, Todd, would you do it again? I said, yes. Now, afterwards, he also said, if you would have said no, I would have told you to learn from the past, honor the defeat, and let it go. To all the men, let it go, man. Because what we're hanging on to is destroying us. It's not making us better. It's destroying us. It's keeping us from living our best life. And when we get to a point where we can observe our thoughts, and then when they go from negative and to be able to change a negative thought, to be able to go from victim to hero, is nothing more than a tool Harvey gave me, thought replacement. We called it the 180-degree mindset. I can go from I can't to I can. It's just going 180 degrees. And then when I focus and refocus, because what I focus on, my energy goes to. So if I'll focus on the positive, I'll start to feel those thoughts, and we can begin to change our state. But it starts with letting it go. And I had to let it go. And I'm going to tell you something. I didn't let it go overnight and I was fixed. It took years, man. It was a process. It was a journey. To this day, that was 1993. This is 2021. I would tell you right now, I have bad moments. My little brother's birthday. Sometimes I have tough days. Sometimes I'll see a butterfly that'll remind me of him, and I'll just melt, right? And I'll miss him so much after all of these years. Sometimes on the anniversary of his death, I'm like, man, and I got to fight that day. I got to fight that moment. But in fighting it, I can hear Harvey telling me, you did everything you can do. Let it go, brother. You weren't in control. See, so many times we're focused on the things we can't control. And we're destroying our momentum, our mentality. We're destroying our emotions on things we can't even control. See, 12 years later, I couldn't bring my little brother back to life. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't fix it then. I couldn't fix it now. So all of my focus, all of my hate, all of my guilt, all of my unforgiveness is on something I can't even control. And it was destroying my life. Pathetic, man. Brutal
and yet so common, right? So common. I just want to just give you some mad respect and appreciation here. I know full well that this is not easy to talk about, and you sharing this story and this journey of even being the observer, which by the way is obviously the title of your new book, is helping men, whoever they are, whether it's a small trauma or something big. I mean, dude, this past weekend, I had to stop what I was doing with my family because I had two men in our community who their wives unfortunately had extracurricular activities, and they both separate men, both found out on Friday. And I had to take time, and these guys were literally in the gutter of their lives.
Yeah.
And, but when I hear a message like this, whether it's something big like that, or maybe it's, someone lost a job due to the pandemic and COVID, or someone lost a relative to COVID, or something like that, to where they're going through something big, to where they can take exactly what you just said, unpack it. Would you do anything different?
Right.
And then understanding like, hey, how am I going to navigate? How am I going to move forward now?
Yeah.
How have, and I want to get to your book here too, but I want to share how you've incorporated this in marriage and with your kids. 5 kids, married to an amazing woman, Erica. Now that you've learned these lessons, right? And you've implemented these lessons now for years. How has that completely changed the game for you as a married man and as a father?
Yeah, understanding true happiness and fulfillment, right? It's like I look back and I'm like, from a worldly standpoint, it looked like I had it all, but I had nothing. And, today I build, and I'm a man of faith. So it starts with God for me today. The person I hated at 15 that I had so much hate towards God. Today is, that's number 1 for me, is my faith. Number 2 is my family. See, I tell people I build my wealth around those top 2 things. Everything else starts to take shape. I know, look, I mean, it's great to make money, have money goals and in business and this and that. But, true wealth. And I have this thing called, I call it the 8 forms of wealth. And it's like to make lots of money and to even get to a point where you create financial freedom. Look, if you don't have your family, you're broke. And it's kind of like, and it's such a great reminder, we're coming out of 2020 and it's like, at the end of the day, what's the most important? It's our family and it's loved ones and it's relationships. And it's like, I talk to people today. It's like, look, man, when you think about relationships, it could be a relationship between a father and a daughter, a father and a son, a father or a husband and a wife. It can be a dad and his friends, his father, his siblings, relationships. The power of those, that's wealth. That's fulfillment. That's happiness. That's love. That's joy. Money, listen, here's what I would tell you. I believe this 100%. And I've seen it happen over and over and over. If you work on you, on the inside, there will be opportunities that will show up, stare you right in the face on the outside, that will help you make all the money you can ever dream of. All the money you can ever dream of. If you work on you, work on your relationships, work on your family, work on the things that really provide true wealth. Look, I can lose all my money and I can make it back. I lose my wife and my 5 children. What do I got then? Man, I don't have much. I lose my faith. What do I have? Not much, man. And it's like, that isn't much. You start losing friends and relationships and people are today, and I look back to 2020, people are breaking friendships and families are breaking up over what? Over how they think and how they feel about COVID, how they think and how they feel about race, how they think and how they feel about politics. And if you don't think the way I think, right? And you have a different opinion, we begin hating one another, despising one another, and relationships are being broken. Instead of saying, hey, man, you got a different point of view, you got a different understanding than I have, we can actually learn from one another. And what happened to the golden rule in the country where you treat people how you want to be treated? But you see, that's not what we did when the chips were down, when there were race problems, political problems, when there was, a pandemic and business problems. What did we do? We acted out of hate, man. We responded out of hate. And that hate, it wasn't because of COVID. Actually, it wasn't because of race. And it actually wasn't because of politics. It's because of who we are and what we're hanging on to on the inside. We need to fix us, find love, find peace, find joy. By the way, happiness is a choice. You get to choose it. Now, here's what I tell people all the time. If you don't choose happiness, you go out into the world, you might have a miserable day because you're just accepting what the world hands to you. Man, I'm telling you, there's a better way. There's a different way. There's a different road. I intentionally choose happiness, to be joyful, to be forgiven, to be loving. I got to tell you something, man. For me, at this juncture of my life, man, I'm finding like real love. Like I've always loved my wife and my kids, but it's like real love comes out of service and understanding and listening and working and serving. And it's just, man, it's been so much. For me, COVID has taught our family so many great lessons. And I would tell people all the time, and we got a lot of companies, and I would focus on the businesses, and I would tell all the men and this and that. I say, listen, two choices. You can get to come out better, you come out worse. It's going to be based on what you do and what you can control, what you focus on. But if you focus on that and you focus on this and and these are things you can't control and you go down that rabbit hole, when we come out, because we will come out, because this too shall pass, how are you positioned when it passes? Better or worse? So
love that, man. It's even, I'll share this quick story with you, man, because I love that theme, that point, that very powerful point that happiness is a choice. Because many of us think, oh, it's a feeling, and I'm subjective to it. So I either feel it or I don't, but it's out of my control. And that's not the case. I mean, something as simple as, my kids last night, my table is like a table of drunk people at dinner. Like you would think my 5-year-old is drinking, he'll show up to the table with no pants on, right? The 13-year-old's acting a fool. The 15-year-old's doing something crazy. The 7-year-old punches the 5-year-old in the head. My wife wants to pull her hair out. And I sat there, and there have been times, right? When I enter into situations like that, where I have expectation and I don't have appreciation, because we have two lenses we can look at life through: expectation or appreciation. And when I'm like, okay, I expect that we are going to be a certain way and we are going to be happy and there's going to be no chaos. There's going to be, everyone's having a good time talking about their day and everyone has smiles on their face and no one's acting a fool. Those are the days I get let down, and those are the days I get annoyed. And I'm like, man, I'm just annoyed. And I'm like, well, wait a second, hang on. And literally last night I did this. I closed my eyes and I listened to the chaos that was ensuing my dinner table. And I thought to myself, I'm going to fast forward 15 years from now. My house will be quiet and I will regret the fact that I didn't laugh and enjoy the chaos that was right in front of me. Because one thing I can tell you, and I think you probably know this, but you have some little ones too at home. Silence is excruciatingly loud.
Yeah, man.
It just is. And in that moment, I was like, I can either choose to be miserable and annoyed, or I can choose to enjoy this. And you're right. It's a choice, man. It really is.
You said about 20 powerful things there that we could go into, but we would need the next 24 hours, because we could break that segment that you just walked through. We could break that down into so many great things, right? And you said, like, you expect, and when we expect things from other people will let us down. instead of appreciate other people, right? Instead of, looking at it differently. You also said that as we choose happiness, people say, well, it's not a feeling, but actually, as you choose happiness and you think happiness and you focus on happiness, you start to feel happiness. And it becomes an emotion. And emotion, man, is the driver of all action. Take a disappointed and angry, a stressful emotion. We know what that looks like. Take a happy, joyful, loving, serving emotion. And what does that look like? Yeah. And at the end of the day, it could start with how we feel, because our emotions will influence our thoughts, and our thoughts will influence our emotions, which is really why I wrote the book, because so much of it was the things that were going on in my mind and the things that I was feeling in my heart. And they worked hand in glove. You see, I didn't feel great and think bad. I didn't think one way and feel another. See, I would think one way and begin to feel that way, or I felt that way and then I would begin to think that way. And it became this whole rewiring process and understanding that it's like, man, if I don't like what I'm thinking, or I don't like what I'm expecting, right? Change the channel, right? Find the joy in the moment. I call my dinner table controlled chaos. And all men are this way. We grew up, when we came to the table, you had to be silent, and this, every man's got we all got the same story, right? And then we grow up and we have all these kids, and we're like, man, and what do we say to our kids? Man, when I was your age, if I'd have come to the dinner and I would have spoken, my dad would have taken me out in the back and he would have broken off a limb or a switch from the tree and grabbed your ankles. And it's like, man, but at the end of the day, it's like, you're right. And I got my kids, it's crazy, because 25, 19, 18, 15, 5. Where do you think all the noise is coming from my dinner table? That 5-year-old is trying to control everything and making everyone crazy at this moment. And it's kind of like, man, I sit back today as a dad, man, and it's like, let me find peace and joy, and let me find just love in this whole scene and everything, and just let it happen. Because if we try to control them, we start to take their spirit away from them. Now, I'm not talking about not holding kids accountable, sure, but I'm talking about, man, their personalities are showing up, and it's like, let them go, man. Watch them, learn from them, and this and that. So much to learn from kids when we watch them. Anyways, we could go on and on. You made so many valid and great points. It's so fun to talk to another dad with a bunch of kids like me, boss.
Yeah, right. I'm sure you get it all the time. I know I do. Like when I tell people how many I have, they're like, wow. It's like, I think wow is the word. Like I can almost say it before they do, but I did have one guy, kid you not. He's like, wait, why? it was the question. Yeah. Why? So let's get to your book, man. The Observer, a modern fable on mastering your thoughts and emotions, which, by the way, the past 43 minutes has been a crash course on that very thing. Right. Yeah, for sure. But, let's talk to the men who are gonna pick this book up. So they're gonna pick this book up. Share with us how the book is written, because it's written differently than your previous book.
What's really funny is all the men out there. It's like the main character is a woman, by the way,
right? Cat,
and it's a fable, and so I created a story based on true life events that I went through, and now. The main character is a woman, an entrepreneur, and she's kind of going through very similar stories that I went through in my life. And then she has a 15-year-old son, and then she has a very famous father that played Major League Baseball, and so there's some similarities. What's odd is sometimes I'm the main character, and sometimes I'm the 15-year-old boy. And what's crazy is I kind of bounce back and forth. the father figure in the story for all the dads was really the wisdom of my father. And then what he ultimately has to go through towards the end of his life was very similar to what my father went through. But he was the coach, and he was the mentor, and he was the world champion, and he was the guy that not only helped mentor and coach and develop kids and grandkids, but also did it professionally on a baseball field and around a baseball field. So I was asked the question one time. They said, Todd, it's like a memoir. I said, yeah. And I was asked, why wouldn't you write it that way? And there's a reason I didn't write it that way. The reason is I didn't want someone to hear the message and say, yeah, but I didn't grow up that way. I didn't want someone to be able to use my story as their excuse not to get better, not to work on themselves, and not to focus on the lessons that I had acquired from Hall of Famers, coaches, father, players, Harvey Dorfman, people that have poured into my life. I didn't want to give someone the excuse that it wouldn't work for them because they didn't grow up a similar way and they didn't have everything that I had. See, I wanted the father or the mother or the person that reads this book that grew up in the orphanage, that grew up maybe on the street, that grew up maybe worse, a lot worse than in because my environment, it was a blessing, man. It was awesome. I didn't want to give anybody the excuse that says, well, easy for Todd because look how he grew up and look at his parents and look at the people he was around. So I wanted to strip that away. And the furthest I could make the character away from me was a woman, so that there was no similarities now. So when someone reads the story about the main character, they don't think of Todd. They just thinking about the main character. And then they start saying, as they go through the story with the main character, go, oh man, I felt that. Oh man, I've done that. Oh man, I can fix that. Because the main character goes through in the book, she goes through this elevated success to a place of self-destruction that then has to rebuild herself and then live in a life of 10 times the wealth that she's ever had. And it's kind of mirrored my life. It's like, you look at my baseball career and he created this wealth and he had this great lifestyle and he had all of these things. And then as I self-destructed and as I went through some different economies and things happen, today is in our rebuilding. It's like, man, I've never been this wealthy ever. Not only financially, but spiritually. Not only spiritually, but with my family. But not only with my family, with my relationships. Not only with my relationships, but with my self-development. But not only with my self-development, my health and fitness. But not only with my health and fitness, my lifestyle. And how about fulfillment in all buckets and being at peace and love and joy in all of that? I tell people I got completely out of balance being present with where I was to create balance in my life. This is the observer. It's getting wherever you're at. You're so focused on being right there that you're all in. All of your focus in the present moment is right there, that everything else is now out of balance. But when you enter into those buckets, you enter into those buckets in the present form, which means you no longer go to work thinking about vacation, and you no longer go on vacation thinking about work. It's getting to a place of literally living this breath, this moment. What am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with this very breath? Because it's not guaranteed. So let's do something with it.
Man, I love that. And I love the way you wrote the book, because it's very, very different. This is a yes or no question, which I hate yes or no questions, but I am curious. Was it difficult writing as sort of this other character, or did it come actually even easier?
I think it might be one of the hardest things I've ever done.
I would think so. I couldn't even imagine. And not only that, not only are you the main character, but you're also then the 15-year-old boy, trying to put all those pieces together into a book. That had to be challenging.
And and then taking my true life story and then trying to marry them to those characters.
Right.
And there was a few times where I backed off. See, it also allowed me to get very vulnerable. It allowed me to tell the truth and not have to say it was me. So it was my way out to build it also into characters in fairness, right? So there was a couple of different reasons why I wrote it that way. I don't know if I'm looking forward to writing another book that way, by the way, because I rewrote that book every chapter 9 different times until I got to the final, because I couldn't get it right. I couldn't get the character, the thoughts, the emotions, the story. It was so hard, because I think if I would have just wrote it as, here's my story, here's a memoir, easy, by the way, because it's just me going through it, plugging through, but I had to fit these characters in, and I wanted it to be more than one character going through it. See, the son went through some things too, and the dad went through some things too. And then there's some things that are going on inside that story. So, man, one of the hardest things I've ever done. Yeah, it took me a long time to really get it right.
Guarantee. Yeah, I can't imagine. The thing that comes to mind, it's sort of off topic, but on topic, is, when is Christopher Nolan going to make this into a movie? Because he likes to take movies like Interstellar and was Inception, like all these really like movies that are just sort of outside the box. They have several moving pieces, and you watch the movie, you're like, how does anybody even think this way? Not to mention put it together in a story. But yeah, that's impressive.
What's crazy is I actually have a production company and producer looking at it.
Are you serious? It's awesome.
They absolutely, they love it. They love that it's kind of a comeback rebound story. And look, we all love the comeback. We all love the rebound, right? And the message I would tell you today is, if 2020 was bad for you, that's great, because it's over and now you got a chance to make the comeback. And when you play the comeback kid, right, it's kind of, you're the underdog, man. It's like, guys, go for it and stuff. I just want, man, I want my message to be where people just go for it. Doesn't mean, listen, I promise you, you will fall. And then sometimes it'll be a hard landing. But as long as you have the ability to get back to your feet, man, you can just keep rolling. But it's kind of the comeback story of creating success and then just destruction and then the comeback. So, and that's my story. It's like from having it all to basically losing it all, to regaining, to relearning, to rewiring, to rebuilding, to recreating, to having it all, but this time to truly have it all. Where I look back on the first time I thought I had it all, I was missing so much, man. I was missing so much. And today it's like, it's like I can find joy in taking a walk, and that's a pretty cool place to be, so.
Amen to that. That is very cool, man. If this ever turns into a movie, that would be phenomenal, by the way.
I'm hoping.
Hoping?
I'm hopeful. Yeah, I never thought about it. I never wrote the book that way.
Yeah.
And then a friend and he's like, hey, can I look at the manuscript? And I said, he goes, I want to make a movie. And I was like, okay. And then, so we met and he's working on the main characters right now and reaching out. So I don't know where it'll end up. And I never wrote it for that. And, but I think it would be cool. And to be a part of something like that, be a new experience. And I think new experiences force you in the present moment, because there's nothing in my background that can prepare me for that new experience. And by the way, new experiences, they force us to the present moment when we have no know-how to that new experience. And I would challenge all the men out there, go do something you've never done this year for what it'll teach you.
Dang, man. do you care if I expand upon that just for a minute?
I want you to, man, because we're kind of like me and you are very sweet. We got some similar stuff, and
we do. Yeah.
No, I want you to expand. Yeah.
So you and I, before we hit record, we were talking about the pandemic. We were talking about how people have been challenged. We've talked a lot about unpacking and observing and getting through things. I love the fact that you just said what you said, because back a year ago in March, I think my wife and I were looking at each other. The kids were, out of school. Everybody was virtual. Everybody's mental health was in the gutter. We thought, I think everybody thought the end of the world was coming, and we were like, oh my gosh, we are asking ourselves really poor questions. Why can't things be like they were? Why can't we do the things that we used to do? Why is this got to be the thing that destroys our family? And then what we realized in that moment, my wife and I'll never forget it. My wife and I were sitting out on our deck, and we were drinking coffee. And I looked at her and I said, you would think 500 something podcasts would wise me up a little bit. And one thing I've realized is you and I are asking ourselves really poor questions. So let's ask this question. How might we come together as a family in a way we never have, because we're faced with things we've never faced? And this is what came out of that question. The thing that we did in the sun, we are actually going to make an entire wall in our basement. And it said, it's going to say something like COVID connected us or something in that way. But we made a plan. For 12 straight weeks, I took off every Wednesday. And the rule was this: go somewhere you've never been, do something you've never done as a family.
Oh, awesome.
And dude, those 12 Wednesdays, we went caving. We went on float trips. We went hiking in places we've never hiked. We've kayaked. We did all kinds of things together as a family, and they were all quote unquote safe, right? But what I noticed is when our family was in unfamiliar territory and we didn't know what was going to happen next, and all these things, it brought us together in such a way because we were all experiencing something for the first time. And you said something else there too about your little brother and butterflies. And I might get emotional when I say this, but in 2014, we lost a son. Not a lot of people know that, but we lost a son. And when we lost him, the hospital gave us a butterfly, and they said, children who die become butterflies, just so you know. And they gave us this little statue of a butterfly, and it just was in there. We put it up on our mantle. Sorry. But anyway, every single thing we did, there were butterflies everywhere. And one thing in particular that was just amazing. We went on a 6-hour float trip where we floated, I think it was about 8 miles on this river, and we rope jumped and we cliff jumped, and we just had a blast. And there was a butterfly, a green butterfly, that landed on my son's leg and stood and sat on his leg. I kid you not. I am not exaggerating. My wife's in the other room. She will verify. 2 hours, sat there on his leg, and none of us were like, leave it there. Leave it there for as long as it will be there, because that's your brother. And he knows that we are on a family adventure, and man, he just wants to be a part of it.
I'm speechless. Now you're taking me to my knees, boss, because every time I see a butterfly, literally every time, I don't just see it, I feel the presence.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful and it's so cool. And I'm all teared up over here listening to because it mirrors so much, but I'm so happy that you guys as a family got to experience that, because it's so powerful. And it keeps the love and the legacy, and it keeps everything in each of your kids and your wife and you and in your heart, and keeps that relationship present. And because of that, he's not dead. He's never going to die. And it's infinite, and it's pretty cool. So,
yeah, man. So I thought it's definitely a pretty cool story that just, combines our stories even more so.
Yeah.
Man, this is, every time we do an interview, man, I feel like it's amazing. And I want to make sure that every person on the planet who listens to this show, guys, you won't be disappointed. Make sure you get a copy of Todd's book. But I want to make sure that if any guy wants to connect with you, grab a copy of your book, like where can they find like literally every single thing that you're doing in the world, man?
Yeah. So toddofficial.com, which sounds kind of weird, Todd Official. But it's toddofficial.com because people couldn't spell the last name Stottlemyre and they would never. So I said to my wife, I said, what are we going to do one day? She said, just make it Todd Official. I was like, oh man, I'm going to be officially Todd, I guess. So anyways, all right, enough of that. Toddofficial.com. It's like, on my website, from my website, you can find me and attach on all the different social media. I try to put something out every day that's positive. I try to put out a video every day, out on Facebook. About every third day or so on Instagram. I try to really share the authenticity of my life on Instagram. That's probably the one medium that I'm like, hey, me and my wife on date nights and hanging out with the kids. I try to, show what's real. And listen, I'll say to all the guys too that are listening and Larry, to you, I didn't come on this podcast to sell books or create awareness. I came on this podcast to hang out with Larry. And I came on this podcast because we're both men and we know that the listeners of this podcast are men. And we have to lend each other our support to one another for all of us to get through, because as men, when things don't go well or we feel like we're letting our family down, man, we can go down a spiral and in that deal because we have so much honor and pride and all of this thing. And I think the message I want to leave today is like, I've been so broken and I've been flat on my back and I've been rich, I've been broke, I've been wealthy. And at the end of the day, I would just say, hey, it's because of Larry, what you're doing, that you're giving someone an opportunity to really, lock arms with you, with the people that you bring, the messages, and how you're serving men and mankind. So that's why I came on here. And do I hope you buy my book? Yeah, I hope you do, because there's 50 different models and principles inside that book. Every single one of those was life-changing for me. Every single one. Now, they might not be life-changing for you, all 50. There might be 2 or 3 that are life-changing. And that's my hope and prayer, that, you pick up the book, you might read the book and you might get something out of the book to take action on. And because of it, maybe like me, maybe because you got better because of it. So, Larry, I appreciate you, man, so much, and having me on, hanging out with you. I don't want to come on your show just to promote something. So the next time me and you get together, let's just do it as a hangout. How's that, boss? Nothing to promote.
I'm good with that, man. I'm always good with that. Yeah.
You're awesome, brother. I appreciate you so much.
Hey, back at you, man. Really appreciate it.
You're in fighting shape too, I see.
I'm trying, man. I'm 40. I'm gonna be 46 this year, so I'm trying to. I got to keep up with these 4 kids, man.
Yeah, man.
I got to have energy to spare because there's too many of them.
Yeah. There's a choice, right? They can either make you young or feel old.
Yeah.
You got to do something now.
My kids always ask, like, why do you hit the gym so much? I'm like, do you know how much energy it takes to keep up with you people? A lot. Right.
That's right.
So, gentlemen, again, we're talking to Todd Stottlemyre. He is the author of the new book, The Observer, A Modern Fable on Mastering Your Thoughts and Emotions. You can find that everywhere. We're going to have all the links in the show notes, all his links in the show notes. Not to worry, just go to gooddadproject.com/314. Again, gooddadproject.com/314. Todd, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming on. This was amazing, man.
Stay in touch, buddy. Stay in touch.
You too.